All right, welcome back to Intro to Technology 1023. We're going to be talking about databases today, and it is the final video recorded lecture of this series. Okay, so with this, and much like all the other more techie topics that we've been talking about up to this point, we are not really testing you on any of this information. We really just want you to have exposure to these topics and the start building you the foundations up so you can actually be a technology expert, ideally walking out of here. uh, but with that said, we need to go over what the hell databases actually are, because a lot of people just know it as, yeah, it's a base with data, and their understanding stops there. Okay, so what are databases? They are things and concepts. Mostly, it is software. It's specialized software to store data. It interacts with hardware, and then depending on what that hardware is, that is your database. Okay, so there, and then you can get into kind of abstract nesting topics where you have something like TrueNAS Scale as your file server, and then inside that file server you have a database. So you can start nesting concepts like that, but for the most part, we're going to stay away from that. And we're going to talk about the two main database types. There are relational, and then there are document based. This is also known as SQL and NoSQL databases. Okay. Relational databases, these are based on tables. Each of the table holds a type of data. So what the table is trying to do is they want to break everything into modular chunks. So if we have a table, it should be a table of customers. Okay, customer data. And then a different table is going to be restaurants. Okay, and then a different table is going to be orders. It's going to be along those lines. And then when you have enough of those conceptual models and concepts isolated, then you can start stringing them together through a series of keys and secondary keys. And the reason why they want to do it like this is because it limits data redundancy. And when these database concepts were created, 70s, 80s type time frame, data storage was very, very, very expensive and extraordinarily limited. All right, so it made a lot of sense back then to limit how much redundant data that you had. Although that is not true today, having less data typically is more performant. Okay, there are scenarios where you don't necessarily want 30 tables, and then you have to go query all those tables just to produce some information that you need for the client or the customer. Uh, at that point, you might want to reconsider how abstracted you're going here. But as a general rule, no data redundancy. Less data is better. Less data means less information that you have to parse through. Okay. Oh, yeah. I just ranted through all that. So cool. Document based databases. Okay, so these document based databases are essentially just little modular components. Okay, so these function significantly better as well. Let's back up a little bit. A table is considered a collection. So you will still have, like our previous example of orders and customers and restaurants. You'll still have those, and those would be collections. They would function as tables. Uh, the difference is that because this is stored as a what is known as a JSON string, the amount of flexibility that you have with that database is extraordinary. And then with the with how much data that in terms of that we can actually store, you can get away with a lot more of the we need this in this scenario problem, right? So a relational database is very, very rigid. Once it's up, it's pretty difficult to change it, right? It's not impossible, obviously, but it's pretty hard to change it. A document based database is very flexible. And a lot of people criticize it because it goes, well, it's structureless. It's not correct, right? Because you still have structure, you still have formatting, you still are very precise in how you're storing that data, especially if you want to perform it. It's just you don't have to do that if you don't want to. And the criticism of that is, well, if you don't force developers to do it, then they won't. Not true, but hey, they got their view. Okay. So here are the numbers regarding what people are actually using. So Oracle database, which is a relational, so is MySQL, SQL Server, and a Postgres. All relational databases. Part of the reason why this is document-based databases haven't really taken off until about 2010, 2011. MongoDB became a reasonable option around 2012, 13, 14, somewhere in there. And look at it already, it's already clawing back a lot of the market. And part of the reason why that is because it's easier to work with. It has a lot more flexibility. The other thing that a document database does really well is speed in terms of just I need this information immediately where I don't have to necessarily parse through a bunch of tables. All right. So, and then there are scenarios where SQL databases are a little faster, but generally speaking, speed isn't a huge concern anymore. It's more about flexibility and scalability and robustness, which SQL Server databases or SQL databases in general are more robust, but that robustness comes with a lot of restrictions as well. So you pick the one that is going to work for you. Okay. So again, like every other, we're going to skip the videos because I don't necessarily want a copyright strike or waste these people time, even though I have full right to them. And that's going to be it for databases. So again, just to recap, the things I want you to really take away from this is databases is just specialized software to store data. That's it. There's two different types of specialized software to store data. You have SQL-based databases that function off of a bunch of tables, and then you have NoSQL, which functions off of storing data as a string, which is known as a JSON object. Okay. And that's it. That's all you really need to know at this level. We have other database courses coming up in the curriculum if you're an Alpha Stage student. If you're not an Alpha Stage student, well, I mean, watch the video. They do a pretty good job of explaining it a little bit more thoroughly than I do. Okay. So with that said, that's all I got for this presentation and for Intro to Technology 1023. So if you actually watched all those videos, well, congratulations, because that doesn't happen very often. And if you're interested in pursuing web development or software development inside of this curriculum, we also have networking degrees. Alpha State has you covered. So with that said, that's all I got for this one. Enjoy. With that said, that's all I got for this one. I don't know what to say here, but enjoy your technology learning journey. It is quite quite the journey, and it takes a little bit of time, but stick with it. It gets easier, I promise. Later.